And one more. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Hemp Your Health. I'm Christy Thiel, Director of Education at CETA System and your host. Hemp Your Health is a show dedicated to health, healing, and prevention. We bring on experts that share their wisdom, intelligence, and experience with you and for the betterment of humans, animals, plants, and the planet. The intention of today's show is to remind you of two principles. One came from Zach Bush, is that we heal faster than we injure. And our guest is going to explain more about that. And that our energies go towards survival before they go towards healing. So be aware of where your chronic stress is coming from so that we can move out of survival and into healing. And you're going to get a lot of wisdom around that today with our guest, Dr. Felecia Dawson. She is a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist in integrative and holistic medicine. She has over 30 years experience in women's healthcare. Dr. Felecia has been acknowledged by Essence Magazine as one of the leading female obstetricians and gynecologists in the nation. My goodness. She is a clinical instructor of gynecology and obstetrics of Emory University School of Medicine and a clinical assistant professor at the Morehouse School of Medicine. She completed the Medical Cannabis Institute certification and is a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. In 2016, Dr. Felecia closed her medical practice, and that her medical practice is called Women for Women, to focus on advocating, educating, speaking, and consulting full-time about medical cannabis. She works with legislators, multiple grassroots organizations to decriminalize this plant that we've been using for millennia with humans as food, fiber, and throughout many, many industries. She offers online educational consultations regarding holistic gynecology, medical cannabis, and CBD. She is advocate and she is a volunteer, and she does community service for services such as Center for Food Safety, Partnerships Against Domestic Violence, Cool Girls Incorporated, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and the Sierra Club. Dr. Felecia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Christy. I'm so happy and honored to be here with you. Been looking forward to this opportunity to co-create with you. And I want to thank my friend Steve Hoffman for introducing us of Let's Talk Hemp. I really appreciate that.
Shout out to Steve Hoffman. Yes, thank you, Steve, because this is going to be great. And I want to acknowledge the courage and boldness and bravery it must have taken to close your practice and commit to education and cannabis. What kind of experiences led up to this decision, and where were you held back by allopathic or conventional medicine?
Well, you know, I really, my patients may have thought that I did it on the spur of a moment, but I had been thinking about it for a few years to close my practice as it was, and I don't know, maybe reconfigure it into maybe a smaller something. There's never been a more stressful time to be a physician in 2016, but now with COVID, my heart goes out to all healthcare practitioners because it is a beast out there. And it, you know, besides just trying to stay up on the medicine, make sure your employees are good, make sure you can make payroll, dealing with the insurance companies, electronic medical records. It was just so much. And it was really weighing on me, messing with my sleep. You know, I really, it was really kind of over it. I love talking to my patients. I would actually rather sit in my office and teach people how to be healthy than to be in the hospital. For a physician to really prefer to be in the office versus in the hospital is kind of weird. But you know, even though I delivered babies and did surgery and all that, my greatest love was always teaching my patients how to be healthier, and for them to come back and say, "What you recommended worked. I feel better. Thank you." You know, that's what really gave me a buzz. But the business side of medicine really was tearing down my spirit. And at the same time, I was learning about cannabis. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, around 2013, was on TV with weed and, you know, looking at the infantile seizures and how CBD oil was helping. And I was like, wow, cannabis can help. I mean, you know, we're taught that it's a drug in medical school. And for me to learn that it was actually medicinal, it was like I had a new life, a new reason for being. And so while I was winding down my medical practice, I was just, you know, really reading and consuming everything I could about cannabis. And eventually I closed my practice in 2016 and just really spent that time learning more and more about cannabis and going to conferences before COVID and talking to legislators at the Georgia Capitol and teaching them about CBD and things like that. And I just really love learning about this plant, the history and the economic opportunity and the health benefits and the ritual sense of it. Just really is an amazing thing. And so I really think that it can really add a wonderful piece to medical healthcare. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it just brings people together.
And it does. And I was sharing a little bit about how it's helped me so much with my stress, which is really kind of how I dove in. And not that that matters at all. You were actually reminding me of something really profound. And ever since you mentioned this principle to me, it's been one of my contemplations since the time we talked. You mentioned your biography becomes your biology. And I wonder if you could explain and empower us a little bit more about what that means, and if there's a way to use cannabis to kind of shift us into a different belief to recreate ourselves.
Well, I'll definitely start with the last thing you said. Cannabis can change your perspective on your situation. You're not your pain, you're not your abuse, you're not the negative things that people have told you in the past. You know, cannabis can put some space in between you and those things and help you see them in a different light. So cannabis actually is sort of like, it can be like psychedelic mushrooms. It can help you see things differently. So that's one thing. In terms of your biography becomes your biology, everything that you've experienced throughout your life, your cells, each one of your cells kind of writes that down and carries that with you throughout your life. And the body, mind, and spirit are connected. But one affects, you know, one thing affects the body, affects the mind, and the mind affects the spirit, and they're all interconnected. All of our body system, neurological, immunological, hormonal, all these systems crosstalk. And same thing with the body, mind, and spirit, they crosstalk. And it's not so much what happens to you, is how you overcome it. You don't have to be stuck in your past. You know, there's a thing called, I think, childhood adverse events. And, you know, it shows up that, you know, if you have 4 or more of these things happen in your childhood, you are more likely to have chronic disease. And even in the conventional literature, women who've experienced physical and sexual abuse will tend to have more problems with gynecologic challenges. That's like in regular conventional literature. So the mind-body connection has already been explored. And one of the things that we're taught in functional medicine is to look at the ATMs, the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators. The antecedents are those things that put you at risk for something, be it genetic, or you were born by a C-section, or you live by a toxic dump or something like that. And then the trigger, which might be some breakup or some episode of abuse. And then the mediators tend to be maybe constantly worried about your bills, or constantly eating food that's not organic. Those, you look at what started it, what triggered it, and what's keeping it going. And a lot of times over my practice, I would ask women, they would say, doc, I have this vaginal infection. It keeps coming back. It won't go away. And I will say, well, let's see, when did it first come? And they'll think back, well, it kind of happened after got my divorce. And they, start to put two and two together. And once you can find out what that trigger was and make sure you've healed from it, you will start on that pathway of getting better. But 95% of the time when we become ill, there was always usually something going on in the emotional, mental arena. And, it kind of settles in your body. And I always tell people that illness is a good thing. I mean, symptoms are a good thing. It's like the universe, God, the source are trying to get your attention that something's not right. You need to look at something. You need to change something. Sometimes people will say cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me because it helped me to put my priorities in line. It's like I now know what's important. And when we get out of balance, God will try to get your attention subtly. But if you don't listen, the signal will get louder and louder and louder until you do listen.
It's so powerful what you just said, because it's something I really want our audience to understand, is that body literacy that you're just explaining, Dr. Felecia. It's so important because with allopathic and conventional medicine, we can take a pill to stop the headache or stop the pain or stop the infection, versus paying attention and what is it trying to tell us. Maybe there was a trauma or an incident or something, that adverse childhood experience that just got stuck, and instead of dealing and bringing it to the surface that we can do, we've circuit breaked, we've stopped the circuits, and now we don't hear, and things are manifesting. I love this because for me, everything is energy, and traumas are energy, toxins are energy, healing is energy, and we can shift, which leads me into the next really important question. As a doctor, a physician, a leader in education to your community, where do you see the endocannabinoid system falling into medicine, healing, prevention, all the way from the most conservative to the most advanced and progressive? Do you think that people are going to start acknowledging this and following people like yourself?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. But, the first and foremost, we've got to re-legalize cannabis. That's got to happen. And that would allow so many things to change, which should happen within the next year or two, I will hope. Once we re-legalize cannabis, because it was legal back in the late 1800s through 1937, and doctors in this country used to prescribe it. And if I could just pause for a second on this thing here, because that's, when I first started talking about telling my colleagues, I think I'm going to close my practice, I'm going to go into cannabis, I was met with, some people said, really? That's fascinating. Tell me more. And then you had others that said, you're going to do what? And oftentimes it was, people of color. For me, it was, we're saying, did we not have enough trouble with crack cocaine and, drugs and all this? Why would you go into cannabis? And so that's, physicians are one group that really, really needs the education. They need to understand that, first of all, slaves and slave traders are the first ones that brought cannabis to this country. before Dr. William O'Shaughnessy did, before, so, when Dr. William O'Shaughnessy did bring it to America, to Europe and America, and, in terms of literature, medical literature and scientific literature, with his observations of what Indian physicians were doing, physicians in this country used to prescribe cannabis medicine. I was blessed to go to Amsterdam a year or two ago and visited the hash, marijuana, and hemp museum. And they have these wonderful exhibits. And by the way, if you want to go to Amsterdam and sample their coffee houses, you better do it right away, because they're about to make it so non-residents cannot visit coffee houses in Amsterdam, because apparently organized crime is a bit of a problem over there. And as quiet as it's kept, cannabis is not actually legal in Amsterdam. They just tolerate it. The government doesn't, they don't know how the cannabis shows up in these coffee houses. They just, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
But at any rate, go to this museum and you'll see exhibits from all over the world and artifacts from all over the world with cannabis and hemp, and how hemp was processed in this country back in the day. And my favorite part of the whole museum was the medical cannabis part, where they showed all the old bottles of medicine that had cannabis in them. There were names like Abbott and Eli Lilly, McKesson, Park Davis, which went on to become Pfizer. All of these pharmaceutical companies in America were producing, cannabis medicines. Some of them even had, opium in them too. And, these prescriptions, actual prescriptions, dated back to 1900. And one in particular stood out to me because it was written by an obstetrician writing a prescription for cannabis medicine for women. And I know that that's a big taboo today, cannabis and pregnant women, but I'm going to go there in the near future, and hopefully I'll be back in a year to talk about that. But getting back to the endocannabinoid system, until cannabis is legalized, federally legalized, it's not going to really be able to take a foothold in medical schools, because some medical schools get their funding from the federal government, from the state government, and they're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole until it's, federally legal. But it needs to be taught right alongside anatomy and physiology, because, the CB1 receptor is the most abundant receptor in the brain. How are you going to talk about anatomy and physiology and leaving out such a major system that governs all of these systems? So the endocannabinoid system must be taught in medical school. It must be taught to every healthcare practitioner who's dealing with patients, or, veterinarians. I mean, everybody dealing with mammals need to learn about the endocannabinoid system, because it should inform your decisions about medicine and about health. And the same things that help you to have good health actually help to make your endocannabinoid system strong and healthy. And we would be healthier as a planet if we all were on the same page as far as that goes.
Oh my gosh, amen to that. And so even though hemp is legal, we need to make cannabis legal, so that we can have full broadness of studying all the cannabinoids, not just in isolation, but also as a plant too. So I think this is really important, because we think, oh, we have hemp, but we need the full spectrum, so that no one goes to jail, no one gets, shut down, no one gets their field burned, because, they went a little hot and things like this. So if you have, at the end, when we ask you how to get a hold of you, if you have any places that we can support this mission for doctors learning about cannabis, and or how to support this federally legal movement, please share that with us, because this is going to take all of us to get this movement moved forward. And you mentioned pregnancy. That is an area where a lot of people ask us, is it safe to take hemp? Is it safe to take CBD? Is it safe to have cannabis pre, post, during, etc.? We have our hands tied because it's such a no-no to talk about. Anything you can share with women pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, nursing, etc.?
Well, my hands were kind of tied. Let me just say this historically, even before cannabis came to this country, cannabis was used for heavy periods, painful periods, trouble sleeping, inadequate labor, postpartum hemorrhage, depression, anxiety. I mean, pregnant women, non-pregnant women historically have used cannabis for literally centuries, thousands and thousands of years. And there is a difference clearly between what's available now and what was available then. The THC concentration, for one, is much higher now than it was historically. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind. And, all of the cannabinoids together, there's a reason, I'm sure there's a reason why all the cannabinoids are in the plant. And for us to take out one cannabinoid is taking away maybe some protection that the plant is trying to give us by consuming the whole plant. So, anytime I tell someone, if you're going to do CBD, do full spectrum CBD. If you get drug tests, then maybe do broad spectrum CBD, without the THC. But you want as many cannabinoids in there as you can to get not only the benefits, and we call that the entourage effect, when you have multiple things together and 1 + 1 = 7. It's like you get a multiplication of the benefits and a minimization of the adverse effects. That's why taking the whole plant is so important. So yes, women are still using cannabis, even though doctors are like saying, I'm not going to ask you, so don't tell me, but what I would tell people who feel they must use cannabis during pregnancy, if you just must, I would say, make sure it is CBD dominant, low THC, and as little as you can, and do not smoke it. Do not smoke it. Smoking any plant material generates thousands, at least 1,000 toxins and cancer-causing agents. So if you must bring it in through your lungs, there is such a thing as inhaler. Some lucky states have inhalers for cannabis. Electronic vaporizers will allow you not to combust the plant material and give you the terpenes and the cannabinoids without generating all those toxins. Or historically, people would put the cannabis in a bowl and burn the bowl or heat the bowl, and the woman would inhale the vapors, or she would take a tincture or use, a topical. Those historically are the ways that women consume cannabis, but you would definitely need to make sure the THC is low, the CBD is dominant, and not smoke it. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you. That's so helpful, because it is a scary topic for a lot of women, because there's not any research. They don't know where to go. We can't help them with that information. There's not enough people like you. But the good news is we're going to get Dr. Felicia's contact, because she does medical cannabis consulting. So don't you guys worry. She is going to, she is a doctor, and this is her job, and she's a woman's doctor. So I could probably talk about that all day, but let's move on. We've got a quick question. What's the name of the museum in Amsterdam?
The Hash, Marijuana, and Hemp Museum.
The Hash, Marijuana, and Hemp Museum.
It's like in two storefronts. It is, and that was they had this one little end part of the exhibit where I got to use the volcano vaporizer. It was so cool. I had never experienced that before, and it was such a clean and light feeling. I don't think there was much THC in it, but it was because it wasn't very intoxicating, but it was just such an amazing sense of well-being and such a lightness with the volcano vaporizer. So yeah, that's a nice way to end the tour.
I'm gonna be Googling volcano vaporizer after this. So back to women's health, what are some of the conditions, you've mentioned some of the conditions that you've seen cannabis and particularly help women with, the PMS, anything around fertility and postpartum depression?
Well, it can certainly help with depression because that's one of the things that cannabinoids do is help with anxiety, help with depression, and also help with PTSD. And I know that we speak about PTSD with men and veterans, but the fact of the matter is PTSD is more like 3-4% in men, but it's like 10% in women because, you know, women are often subjected to physical and, you know, and sexual violence. And so women actually suffer from PTSD much more than men do. And cannabis can help with that. Other conditions, you said, what was the one before postpartum depression?
Yes.
Which one before that?
Infertility, getting pregnant.
Infertility. Now, it's interesting that you would say that because I just posted about an article, a piece of research that looked at how cannabis may impact women's fertility negatively. And that goes back to the endocannabinoid system. It's so our reproductive system in women is so complex, and the endocannabinoid system and the interactions and, you know, the concentrations of the different endocannabinoids. It's like sometimes the level of endocannabinoids in your plasma or blood is different than what it is in the tissues. And your endocannabinoids and anandamide and 2-AG need to be at different levels for everything to happen right, for the egg to be released, for the egg to travel from the ovary to the tube, through the tube, to the uterus, to implant. I mean, it's like an amazing production. Everything needs to be done at the right time, at the right concentration. And our endocannabinoids are very weak compared to the cannabinoids, the phytocannabinoids in the plant. Our endocannabinoids last about a few minutes to a few hours, versus the phytocannabinoids last for hours to days. I mean, THC can last for weeks in your fat cells. So if you're trying to get pregnant and you're having trouble and you're consuming cannabis on a regular, you might want to push back from that because it could be interfering with your body's own symphony that's trying to play, and you're interrupting it with a loud truck, you know, as in the THC. So that's what I would say about fertility and cannabis. You might, if you're having trouble getting pregnant, you might want to push back from that. And that includes men too. Apparently, I mean, I haven't looked in depth at all of the research on semen quality, but to my understanding that heavy cannabis smokers, men, their semen quality is poor. So for whatever that's worth.
That's worth a ton. It's not always on the females. Definitely the men play a role in this too. And thank you. That's so much wisdom. And we've never ever gone that deep into a conversation on fertility, pregnancy, the reproductive system, both on the male and female. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about when it's getting too late to have babies? What role does the endocannabinoid system and cannabis play in the aging endocannabinoid system, and then kind of preparing for menopause, to menopause, and post-menopause?
Well, unfortunately, as we get older, the endocannabinoid system gets a little weaker as we get older, much like our immune system. Some of our hormones are not quite as robust as they used to be, like growth hormone. Even the functioning of our gut, sometimes the stomach acid declines with aging. So endocannabinoid system could use a little help to help us get to sleep, to help protect us against Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases. You know, because cannabis can actually generate new nerve cells in the brain. it can help with some of the sundowning that can happen with Alzheimer's patients. So cannabis can really be helpful to people as we get older and have trouble with hot flashes and trouble sleeping and that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh. Anything that you recommend, and particularly women, men, people, humans, use more the hemp dominant full spectrum versus the THC form? Just because I know some of our listeners are probably won't use the marijuana side, the THC side, but we're really bridging the gap and helping people understand how safe and necessary. In fact, like to me, cannabis, hemp is an essential nutrient because we have this vast, enormous system. Anything in particular that you've seen hemp really be helpful with as a full spectrum and full plant?
Oh, definitely. Sleep. If your lack of sleep is due to anxiety, then hemp-based CBD can help with that. Also, pain if it's not too severe. Even depression if it's not too severe, hemp-based CBD can be helpful, full spectrum. Let's see what else. I mean, anything that you would treat cannabis with, you can try to treat with CBD, hemp-based CBD. But in my opinion, anxiety, depression, PTSD, those are the main things. I forgot. Autoimmune disease can be very helpful. Autoimmune disease can be very helpful too, because the cannabinoids are very anti-inflammatory.
That sort of touches at least 80% of the population. What is the new statistic that 40% of the population has at least 2 chronic illnesses, and that's probably includes at least one autoimmune condition. 80% of the women and children running around are, like you touched on, have PTSD in that spectrum. So this is huge, and I love.
Yeah, I forgot. Yes, seizures, autism. I know I'm forgetting quite a few. Yeah, autism. Yeah, all those things.
Oh my gosh. So thank you. You are a huge advocate, obviously for medicine, for health, for healing, for prevention, but you're also an advocate for farmers. What kind of advice do you have for us, of people that want to continue to see this industry have integrity and safety and standards? What are you involved with, and what can we do? What kind of wisdom can you share with us about how to protect the integrity and growth of this industry without it getting taken over by some of the corporate greed?
Well, number one, we have to elect leaders that look like us and have our priorities in mind, that they are there to serve the average American and not just the corporate billionaires. That's number one. Number two, I think we need to incentivize regenerative practice. As in one of those books that I held up, Farming While Black, don't be afraid of that title. The book is really a ridiculously detailed handbook on how to farm regeneratively. How to help create good, alive soil by not tilling. That, as anyone who's seen that movie, Kiss the Ground, I believe it was, we only have 60 harvests left, 60 years left of topsoil. The way that modern America produces food is killing the soil, turning it to dirt, turning it to something that requires more and more pesticides and herbicides every year, because life evolves, mutates. These organisms they're trying to kill are mutating, and they're having to use more and more. So we have to take better care of the soil. And shockingly, this book goes into great detail on how to farm in a regenerative manner, and and what I learned is that my ancestors who were brought here as slaves brought a lot of the techniques that are used in regenerative farming. They brought it here with them because they were doing it in Africa. And they also brought some of their seeds with them, which was another mind blower for me, because I was like, I don't know why I thought all of the slaves were stripped naked while they were put on the boats, but apparently some of them were allowed to keep some of their clothes, and they would, bring some of their seeds with them, including cannabis seeds. Wow. And to learn that a lot of the practices that are used by organic farmers and farmers trying to, grow things in a regenerative manner were brought here by slaves. So that was mind blowing. So that this book was not only tells you how to do it, it also gives you a little history. And I really, really love that about this book.
Oh my gosh. And I really need to emphasize to all of our listeners, please watch Kiss the Ground. Dr. Felecia just said something very profound, that we have 60 more growing cycles left. And that is if we do not change our growing practices. You've probably heard of the Big Dust Bowl. This is the next big extinction, and it has a lot to do with our soil turning to dirt and carbon being released into the air and not pulled into the soil. And you don't have to grow hemp or cannabis to do regenerative farming. Do it on all your crops. This is so important because we're not going to have an endocannabinoid system if we're not around anymore.
Right.
And I love that, the only promising thing about this extinction, if we go there, is that extinctions always precede the next jump into evolution. So if we do extinct ourselves, we're going to come back as something bigger, greater, and more intelligent. But let's not do that. Let's just start with regenerative practices. And another way you can support regenerative practices is buying from farmers that do organic and regenerative farming. So
yes,
farming, don't think you can't do your part. You can, and you will. And it's just such better food too, right? Because
much healthier. I mean, I think part of the problems that we're having, we're depleting the soil so much of nutrients by these big ag farming practices that is deficient in selenium and other minerals that we need, which is leading to disease. And so, organic regenerative farming practices actually allows nutrition to be in the soil while the vegetation pulls the carbon dioxide out of the air into the soil to make the soil more healthy. And then all the nutrients get into the plant, we eat the plants, and, we're healthier. I think a lot of the chronic diseases that we're experiencing are because we're eating crops that are grown in sterile soil, in addition to all the toxins and pesticides on them. I'm sure most of this audience, because I'm sure we're talking to the choir here, eats organically most of the time. But, for other people who may not feel they can afford organic food, really, go to the Environmental Working Group website, ewg.org, and look at the Clean 15 and look at the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen are those 12 vegetables and fruits that are highest in pesticides. You want to avoid those unless you eat them organically. And on that list are some of our favorites. Interesting, my battery's going low. Okay. Am I still there? Okay, good. Okay. Yes. So you want blueberries, kale, collard greens, things like that are like in the Dirty Dozen. You want to eat those things organically, and if you can't afford to eat the organic things, go for their Clean 15 list. So if you can't afford to eat organically, just try to at least eat vegetables and fruits that are not so toxic.
Yeah, this is huge because especially if anything is sprayed with Roundup, which most things are, then you have the active ingredient glyphosate, which is an antibiotic, which is water soluble, which is a mineral chelator. So we're not only lacking the minerals and all these building blocks from our food, but we're also depleting our bodies even more, which I like to go back to the endocannabinoid system before we wrap up and say, the endocannabinoid system is there to tell us where the cries in the night are, where the imbalances are. where in your body needs the anti-inflammatory support and the antioxidant boost and things like this, and
Mhm.
rest and the calm and the peace. This is so good. Dr. Felecia, I am like, I love talking to you. This is wonderful. You're grounded, you're wise, you have all this vast experience. Any closing notes for us as far as things that we can we should know, look at, follow, how to heal?
Mhm. The same things that promote good health promote your endocannabinoid system. Getting 7, 8 hours of sleep is huge. Eating 8 to 10 servings of organic vegetables a day if you can. If not, the clean 15. Moving your body in a way that gives you pleasure. I won't say exercise, because if you hate exercise, it's important that you like the activity that you do. Because when you do something you love, that makes your endocannabinoid system sing and become stronger. And singing, by the way, if you like to sing, will make your endocannabinoid system stronger. Of getting plenty of omega-3 fatty acids. And hemp is a really good source of both of those. And let's see, what else? Body work, acupuncture. All those things can make your endocannabinoid system healthier and makes your health better as well. And stress management. I mean, doing something, I love one of your physician guests talking about stress, fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
We were, the freeze is true. I always tell people, if you're feeling stressed, try to move around, shake it off. When you see ducks fighting in the pond, they flap their wings and this and that, but then they're like calm and smooth after that. So it's like, get up, move to release the stress, because what we are doing is internalizing it and just letting it stay there. But if you would take a walk, squeeze a ball or something, you would help to release that stress. So all of that will work to help make your endocannabinoid system strong.
Wow, thank you. Not so often am I just like, just pausing. And I hope you can all share this show, this episode with your friends, with your colleagues, with your family, with your sisters. Everyone can benefit from hearing the wisdom and knowledge and vast experience that Dr. Felecia has shared with us. Steve Hoffman has put Netflix, I can't tell what it is, but I'm guessing it's Kiss the Ground. Note. So do your
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve. Do yourself a favor, re-listen to this, share this, listen to Kiss the Ground, support regenerative farming, support your local and holistic and organic cannabis farmers, and hemp your health. This is so important that we're together on this so that we can support legalization, we can support doctors getting the resources and research done so that they can help advocate and heal more people, because we are a sick nation and we need to get better so that we're not so vulnerable to all these little tiny attacks that just tear away at us over time. Dr. Felecia, thank you from the bottom of all my soul for being here today, sharing your time and wisdom with us. Where do people get a hold of you if they'd like some consultations and further medical advice?
The easiest way is through my website, drfelecia.com, and you spell out the word doctor, DOCTOR, Felecia, FELECIA.com.
All right, everyone, check her out. Her website's beautiful. She has other podcasts on her website. So listen up, take care, hemp your health. We'll see you next week. Bye for now. Mwah.